That is okay. All right. We're officially rolling.
Lovely.
Right. And make sure I'm not too much in shot. I guess my first question is, how does it start, right? Like, how does performance get started in the community? The 80,000 years worth of history here before invasion, fundamentally. How does performance emerge?
Well, I can only go by, I can't tell you how it emerged 80,000 years ago.
Of course.
But I can go from the years of experience that I've had working with songmen and women and lawmen and women from different communities around the country. And in terms of, we have so many different, what most people would call ceremony or corroboree. We call it Guribangurja, mob in Central Desert call it Inma, Yolngu mob call it Bongol. There's many different names. Down here, it's Tanderum. So we have many different forms of performance, which normally you see as ceremony. But within that ceremony, there are many different forms of storytelling. Not everything is for, I suppose, spiritual or religious purposes. There are play dances, there are funny stories, there are a range of different genres within that one form. And within that, you also see different methodologies and dramaturgies used in how you convey those stories, and different techniques and rhythms, different choreographic processes, different choreographic motifs that are, inherent or specific to region and mob. And that is where you see, aside from that, you've got the performative aspect where you've got a direct performer-audience, songman relationship, that triangle going on, where it's slightly different because your audience generally knows the symbols that they're looking for.
Yep.
So, and there are many layers of symbols. So in terms of, if there is a song as part of a larger song cycle, you've got the songman who holds that story, who is singing that story. That story being sung is then being moved within, certain parameters. There are certain forms and things that the dancers have to do. If we're saying a male dancer is performing that, then there's something that he's doing. All these symbols are being read by the audience because there's already a relationship and an understanding there. But then also on the body of that male performer, there will be the story or a particular part of that story that is painted on the body. So then that also signifies to the audience what relationship or kinship or totem system, how he belongs to that story, from what part he belongs to that story. And then in some regions where you have men and women dancing at the same time, you'll be looking to see the female dancer who will be placing generally her hands on different body parts to signify to you what her relationship is to him.
Yeah, right.
And there's lots going on at the same time.
Yeah. It's incredibly complex, actually. And the amount of kind of symbols and signalling that you're describing is really reminds me of the kind of postmodern work that we've been sort of studying in the last sort of 10, 15 years.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It is completely postmodern, only 80,000 years old.
Yeah. Which is terrific, really. And leads me to a kind of question about how an audience interprets and participates in a work as well.
So, all right. So one of the first residencies I ever did as a NAISDA student up in Sydney is we went to the Tiwi Islands in Bathurst Island. So before we went up there, we had the elders come down and do residencies with us in the city.
Mm-hmm.
That was for us to learn a creation ceremony, which generally is done, I can't remember what time of year at the moment, but it is done at a specific time. It is generally, the creation ceremony is generally about bringing about all the different totemic and kinship systems together for one purpose,
Mm-hmm.
and it is to remember to honour the beginning and where you come from. So we did jungle fowl, we did crocodile, we did brolga, you know, and so you have all these stories that are related to the beginning. And it starts with, you know, that particular creation ceremony was like, it was almost a play, but it was done to music, which then ended up in dance. So it was kind of mimed at the beginning. And it was the story of Purukapali, the sun and the moon, which was about him, his wife, and brother, and there was a little bit of a, you know, triangle going on. There was jealousy. One got banished to the night sky to become the moon. The other one became the sun, and the woman in question was banished to only ever be awake at night when he could oversee her, so his brother, the sun, the two would never meet again. You know, like, and that is all played out in almost like a play acting mime thing until the songman gives you the cut, and then you start to dance and finish the ceremony. And generally that was done 2 or 3 times. A lot of them are on repeat. And that at times is up to the discretion of the songman. And then you go to, like I was working with, and this is where I talk about technique and methodologies and in some way dramaturgies. You know, I was working with a mob up in the Cape York, and the old man who was the songman for that mob at the time, he's now passed away. And when I returned, his partner in crime had taken over that senior songman position while they were training the younger fella up. And he leant over to me and he said, "No, you'll see some changes in this now, you know, because I'm here."
Yeah.
Okay, so old man used to he was really big on the storytelling. So when you hear him sing, he sings slower so that you can hear every word.
Yeah.
Where he was like, "No, I'm a bit more into the rhythm and pace." So I've picked up the words aren't that important to me, so we've been putting rhythm in, and now you'll see them dance different. So there's all of that, and that's kind of, you know, that's generally, you know, a privilege afforded songman to songwoman to songwoman to songman, and that's how you have an evolution of a form.
Yeah, yeah.
So what we're dancing now is not necessarily is how it was danced 60,000 or 1,000 or 100 years ago.
Yeah. Well, which is quite like how all the old kind of epic stories from kind of Greek tragedy, etc., for 1,000 years were told from person to person to person before we collected them all together as Homer. So yeah, that's really interesting. That leads me to wondering, how does one get started? Are you selected from the community, or do you put yourself forward? And what's the training like and stuff?
Well, see, I've never been, you know, an apprentice songman or anything. But I've been with mob, and it's very different now. It's very different now, because what we've got is a situation where, you know, particularly down south, we've got all of our mobs who, you know, are still trying to come to terms with the effects of colonisation and invasion and what that had done, particularly along the east coast, how it had eroded, you know, practices of how cultural knowledge were passed on. You know, to the point where up until, it's my generation, my father didn't speak our language. It was only 10 years ago that our language was put into a dictionary, a written form. So that kind of, my grandmother was the one that was forced to stop speaking. So you've got all these different, and from my point of view, going around, all parts of Australia, you've got the will of younger generations. You have this urgency from our elders that the younger generations know their culture.
Yeah, yeah.
But are limited in what knowledge they can pass on because of.
Yeah, because it's all that's left.
Mm.
Yeah, yeah.
And so you have younger generations that are reclaiming language, that are reclaiming song and dance and ceremony and performance and technique, and rebuilding methodologies and dramaturgies around how that is supposed to come together and being culturally appropriate to this region without having to borrow from up north or over west, or there's all of that going on down south, whereas you have quite catastrophic and urgent issue happening in more regional and remote communities where you find language, story, song, dance is still largely intact, but is at threat of dying out because you have modernity influencing new generations.
Yeah, yeah.
And really, when you think about it, if you're a 14-year-old child, wouldn't you rather be on a mobile phone that can pick up Wi-Fi or broadband looking at 50 Cent videos rather than sitting under a tree being told off because you're not doing the right dance step to a 100 or 1,000-year-old story?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. There's that going on. But it's become critical, that kind of, that cultural knowledge and that retention of it.
Yeah, yeah.
And maintaining it. But I've seen people, so the practice of identifying who the next songman, who the next songwoman is going to be has differed. And that, there's some of the mobs that I've been with, they've emerged. Mm-hmm. Those like them old people, they watch like a hawk. And then someone will take a fancy and they'll go, that's the one.
Yeah, yeah.
And then that young man or young woman will be lumped with the responsibility. And you can see some of the young ones crumble.
Yeah.
Well, not crumble, but the pressure of that kind of cultural responsibility is quite big.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.